You're watching World News on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. Another 25 political prisoners have reportedly been freed by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. That's according to state media outlet Belta, which indicates that 12 women and 13 men were pardoned. Lukashenko's move comes less than a week after he freed 52 prisoners, most of whom had been jailed for extremism, a charge the Belarusian regime often uses to imprison dissidents. The previous group was freed following an appeal by US President Donald Trump. In exchange, the US said it would lift some sanctions on the Belarusian airline Belarus. As of today, there are more than 1,100 political prisoners in Belarus, according to the human rights organisation Vyazna. Russia is, in fact, losing the war. That's the message from America's special envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg. He told the 21st Yes conference in Kyiv that while Russia is portraying itself as the victorious party, it lacks the military resources to support the claim.
They can't operate in large movements because the Ukrainians will kill them. And the Ukrainians are fighting valiantly on there. And so do I think the Russians are winning? Putin says it, and I think the West just needs to push back and say, no, you're not. And I actually, it's a great question because I was actually asked this question by the President Trump, in the Oval Office probably 6 weeks ago, same question, and I responded quite forcefully. And I finally said, Mr. President, don't just listen to me. Your chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, is outside. He's out in the outer oval. Bring him in. Ask him that question. He's your principal military advisor. And he did. And Dan said the same thing. Are they winning? Nope. They're not winning. So Putin could say he's winning all he wants.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says Russia has launched more than 3,000 drones and 190 missiles since the start of the month. It comes as Russia and Belarus wrap up their joint military exercises close to Poland's border. At the same time, some analysts say US President Donald Trump is trying to avoid hitting Moscow with extra sanctions by insisting NATO countries need to act first.
Blown to bits in broad daylight, this Russian strike in Kharkiv, close to the front line in northeastern Ukraine, destroyed an educational building, injuring 2 people. Early on Tuesday, Zaporizhia in southeastern Ukraine came under a large-scale air assault. The attacks caused a series of intense fires across the city. The regional governor reported that at least 1 person was killed and more than a dozen injured. There were also strikes in the Sumy region and the capital, Kyiv, where a double-tap strike hit emergency workers fighting a fire caused by an earlier attack. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy detailed the level of attacks his country has suffered.
Since the beginning of September alone, more than 3,500 drones of various types and nearly 190 missiles, along with more than 2,500 aerial bombs, have been launched against our people.
Ukraine's military said it struck Russia's Saratov oil refinery during an overnight attack on Russia's Saratov region. Donald Trump has called for all NATO countries to stop buying Russian oil and gas, but experts suggest the US president can use Turkey, Hungary and Slovakia's interest in maintaining Moscow's energy supplies to sideline the issue of further US sanctions on Russia.
Turkey has no political will to do that, Hungary and Slovakia also, but even if they would have political will, it would take a couple of years. So I read it that President Trump doesn't want to impose new sanctions on Russia.
All of this comes as Russia and Belarus wrap up their Zapad joint military drills. Experts say the exercises will be notable, not for the number of troops involved, but the participation of international observers.
Some of the observers that turned up, notably the American, but also, if I understand correctly, Turkish and Hungarian observers from NATO, plus a number of observers from the rest of the world. Now that, I think, sends a signal which is probably the more lasting effect of these exercises rather than what actually took place.
Some may regard this as another step in Russia's longed-for return to the international arena.
Prime Minister Donald Tusk has confirmed Poland is launching a new initiative to acquire submarines from willing international partners by the end of this year.
We are working together to enhance NATO's defensive capabilities. It must be strongly emphasized once again that these exercises, like the entire North Atlantic Alliance, are defensive in nature. They are a response to aggressive maneuvers on the other side of the border. There is no doubt about that. It is crucial for us that both potential adversaries and all allies see that we are prepared to act at the highest level of technical complexity. I also want to inform you that, at the initiative of the Prime Minister, the government will announce its decision to launch the Orca program tomorrow. We have been waiting a long time for this. Tomorrow we will adopt a resolution committing to purchase submarines by the end of the year. I'm referring to the Orca program that has been talked about so much. The bids have been reviewed, and now the Polish government will decide who will be the program's partner.
Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine is our war. This from Finnish President Alexander Stubb as he visits Latvia and meets with President Edgars Rinkēvičs. Top of the mind for the pair, Russia's drone incursion into Polish airspace last week, as they underlined that such escalations will not be tolerated by NATO forces.
What happened last week is something that I would say, for me, is very difficult to believe was accidental. If you have 19 plus drones flying into Poland, then, as we discussed actually with President Stubb, there can be a couple of explanations: intentional, incompetence, or both. And all of three options are scary, frankly.
Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine is our war. Russia's escalation of its war in Ukraine to include incursions of European airspace is simply unacceptable and calls for a clear response. That's why I welcome the actions undertaken by NATO in the form of Eastern Sentry.
And as President Stubb touched down in Latvia, Finland's Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen was in Kosovo, voicing her hopes for Pristina to push towards democracy after months of political deadlock. The comments follow the appointment of the Speaker of the Assembly, clearing the way for the formation of a government.
I welcome the election of the new Speaker of the Assembly. I also express hope that the process of the formation of the Assembly proceeds in line with the Constitution and that we see a new government soon, with whom we look forward to continuing our cooperation. With the appointment of a new EU Special Representative for the Pristina-Belgrade dialogue, reaffirming commitment to the dialogue and advancing the implementation of existing agreements are crucial to ensuring progress.
More than 1 million Romanian voters were targeted by Moscow's disinformation campaign ahead of the country's presidential election in November last year. That's one of the main findings of an investigation run by the Romanian prosecutor's office into the highly contentious vote, which was overturned by the country's constitutional court.
This is Călin Georgescu, a man who was very close to becoming the Romanian president. Pro-Russian and nationalist, Georgescu won the first round of the presidential election in November 2024, thanks to a social media blitz which lifted him from total obscurity. In an extraordinary move, the Romanian Constitutional Court then annulled the vote, pointing to Russian meddling. Now we know the extent of that meddling, thanks to an investigation launched into the matter. According to the findings, Russians used 2,000 Facebook accounts and 20,000 bots to propagate AI-generated messaging, which found its way to 1.3 million Romanian voters. Romania's Prosecutor General Alex Florenta said that Georgescu was the clear beneficiary of the meddling campaign. In the aftermath of the election, Georgescu was banned from running again. Rerun elections have been won by pro-European Nicu Șordan. The full findings of the investigation are yet to be released.
And that's the latest world news here on TVP World. But don't go anywhere. Our in-depth news show is next.